Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look as to why Camille top has suddenly seen a rise in popularity over the past few patches. Pros are spamming her a ton in solo queue right now. She does have the highest pick rate all of a sudden for any top laner in solo queue as well, so we're going to be breaking down why that is and why she's a stronger pick right now. So Camille's always been a very good scaling top lane champion. She does very well when she does hit a couple items, but her main weakness has always been the fact that her early laning early on in the game is her weaker point. So a lot of people now are starting to take grasp on her. It's becoming really popular. A lot of people are taking it now over Conquer, and it just allows her to survive the early game a lot easier, get past her weaker point, and hit her mid to late game spike without falling behind in the early game. When you dive a little bit deeper into stats as well, you see that Jack, Shen, Renekton, and Fiora are four of the most picked top laners right now, and if you run Conquer into those champions early on in the laning phase, it's very difficult for you to win trades against them. The grasp just allows for you to have a much better time in the laning phase because you're not looking to take these extended trades early on with Camille. You want to take these short trades with the champion, so grasp is going to benefit you a lot more. If you run Conquer into something like Jax, you're only going to be able to get a couple stacks early on in the laning phase, so it's just going to be much more less useful than the grasp early on. Conquer also did just receive a nerf recently, so it indirectly does make grasp a little bit stronger, and just also for early on in the laning phase, Camille doesn't really have an ability in her kit that gives her like a bunch of Conquer stacks immediately, like a Renekton W or like a Garen E or Urgot W. She doesn't have that like really nice ability in her kit to stack up Conquer, so it just makes it so that grasp early on in the laning phase especially is just so much better. Now with Camille's passive, it does scale with maximum health. 20% of her max HP is converted into that shield, so by running the grasp and getting the max HP procs from that, and also by running overgrowth, it just synergizes really nicely with Camille's kit. And then the shield bash is also super good on her because it synergizes with her passive along with grasp and overgrowth. Whenever you proc your passive with Camille, you're going to get that extra damage from shield bash, and it does also have a max HP scaling on it, so with your grasp procs and your overgrowth, you're going to be getting more damage coming out of your shield bash. And then since shield bash and bone plating are just so good on the champion, if you were to run Conquer on her, usually players do take resolve secondary and they take shield bash and bone plating, but because you take resolve primary and you're taking those runes in your primary tree, it allows for you to go inspiration secondary, and it allows for you to go for free boots along with biscuits, and with those free boots there especially, it allows for you to hit your mid game spike a lot faster, and that's just really key for a champion like Camille. So by going for the resolve primary and then by taking inspiration secondary, it's going to allow for you to hit that Triforce and Death Stance spike a lot earlier on in the game, and also a lot more reliably. You're not going to be falling behind in the early game as much with this setup. You're going to be scaling really nicely into the mid game there, and if you can get to Triforce and Death Stance on Camille, that 2-item spike is insanely good on her, so you can just start to solo carry games if you can reach that item spike without falling behind too much in the early game. And then if we move on to talking about the unique build setup that a lot of pros are going for right now on their Camille, for starting items, it's either going to be Doran's Blade or Doran's Shield. So most matchups go Doran's Blade, but if you're up against a ranged top laner who's going to poke you a lot early on, or just a more difficult matchup, you can go for the Doran's Shield. For your first base there in the early game, you can grab another Doran, so double Dorans is pretty popular on Camille, allows for yourself to have a little bit better of an early game there. You can grab a Sheen. If you have enough gold for a Sheen on your first base, it does give you a lot of kill threat there early on in the laning phase, but if you base and you don't have enough gold for Sheen, then don't grab a mana crystal, grab a longsword, grab a ruby crystal, go towards a phage. So it kind of does depend on how much gold you have on your first base as to what you do end up buying. And then for the core build there, it's going to be a Triforce rush into Tiamat and then Death's Dance. The reason to why you see Tiamat right now as a second item, or there's a couple reasons why you see it more so as a second item than a rush item on pro players. Number one is that if you just outright rush a Triforce, it's going to give you a lot more 1v1 potential earlier on in the game with that nice 1-item spike. Also, if you end up getting a lead early on in the laning phase with Camille, say you get a couple kills, you get a nice gank from your jungler, or you get a solo kill, and and you rush the Tiamat, it kind of limits your ability to extend that lead early on in lane, because when you rush Tiamat, it makes it so that you auto shove waves, right? You can't really manipulate waves if you go for Tiamat. You can't look to freeze on your opponent. So by not going for Tiamat, it just allows for you to set a freeze in front of your tower, zone the enemy from CS, and it just allows for you to extend your lead a lot easier early on in the laning phase. So you still pick it up as a second item though, because at that point in the game, you'd want to be in the side lane and you want to just be able to perma-shove waves as quick as possible. So the Tiamat is going to allow for you to do that a lot easier. And then Death's Dance there as your third item, just insane 2-item spike like I touched on earlier. Trinity Force and Death's Dance just allow for you to be a monster in the 1v1 there, and it just makes it so that you start to take over games once you pick these 2 items up. And then another really important thing to note here about your boots buy on Camille is that most pros right now are not upgrading their magical footwear into tier 2 boots until they've completed the Triforce, Tiamat, and Death's Dance. So this just goes back to hitting your mid game spike as soon as possible. You want to get to Triforce and Death's Dance as early on into the game as you can. So you're not actually seeing very many pros get tier 2 boots early on in the game. But once you do complete those items, once you complete your core items on Camille, the tier 2 boots that pros are going for right now are either the Lucidity boots, the Merc Treads, or the Ninja Tabis. You do see the Lucidity boots, which give you CDR on a lot of Korean pros right now, because it allows for you to hit 40% CDR there. You get maxed out on CDR with that setup. Merc Treads and Ninja Tabis though are still 100% viable on her, but if you haven't tried the CDR boots yet and you're snowballing really well in the early game with Camille, then it's definitely worthwhile to try out. And then for the full room page there, we've already touched on most of these earlier on in the video, so just to quickly go over it, the grasp there with the shield bash, you can either run the second wind or bone plating. If you're in a ranged matchup and the enemy is just very easily going to be able to take away your bone plating, then you can look to go the second wind, overgrowth, and then for inspiration, it's going to be the free boots along with the biscuit delivery. And then for the ability maxing, it's going to be Q max first, E second, and then W last for most of your games. You do see a little bit of E max first if you're up against a matchup like a Shen or a Jax, to where they can block a lot of your Q damage or they can negate your Q damage. You'll sometimes see an E max first, but if you just want a cookie cutter setup to run every single game, then Q first, E second, W last is going to work very well for you. The abilities you take levels 1 through 3 though are going to be different than what you max out. So you want to take W level 1, E level 2, and then Q at level 3. So even though you want to max your Q first, you don't take that until level 3. And then for a couple of Camille's weakest matchups, some of the best bans to consider if you're playing her in this patch, Renekton, Jax, and Shen are 3 of the best at the moment. I definitely lean more towards the Renekton and Jax though. Those are usually 2 of her more difficult matchups. Renekton there with his empowered W, it makes it so that you basically don't even have a passive. Renekton's empowered W destroys shields, so if he uses that correctly, then he can just very easily win out on trades against you in the laning phase. The Jax there with his dodge, it makes it very difficult for you to trade against him as well. And then Shen there, he also does have his dodge in his kit with his W, so it makes it so that if he times his W correctly, he negates a lot of your Q damage. So any 3 of those champions there are a really good ban if you're looking to play Camille. Alright, so that is going to be all for the video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed and have a pretty good understanding as to why Camille is having a lot of success right now with this new strategy, and to why a lot of pros are just spamming her in solo queue at the moment. So with that being said, guys, if you did enjoy, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.